Next, we have a conversation, a panel session with my dear guests, always dear guests, Manuel Pais and Matthew Skelton. They are co-authors of the book Team Topologies. I'm sure most of you have already heard about it. So,
okay, so what do I need to do today? Let me fire up my task list and see what I've got.
Can we stop this movie? We'll come to that later. So, Matthew and Manuel wrote a bestseller book 3 years ago, and this book and the ideas from this book are still continuously changing the way organizations around the world work and how they are structured, how people in these organizations interact, behave, and it's truly one of those rare books and one of those rare ideas that are equally universally successfully accepted by both technical and business people, which is rare today. 3 years have passed, and as we said, these days a lot of great interruptions happened in the meanwhile. So what we will talk today is how does team topologies concept work in a modern day. So we'll talk more about remote aspects of team interactions in these times. We have a really nice program today. So we will have a little bit of role playing. We will have a discussion, a conversation. I would like this to be highly interactive. So please raise your hands, ask questions, and we will love to engage in this discussion. But before we go straight to the remote aspects of team interactions, I think it will be useful for all of us to come to the same page around team topologies concepts and what are we actually trying to achieve here. So Matthew, Manuel, for start, could you walk us through the main underpinning ideas of the book? So a lot of us know that the book underpinning ideas are how can we use Conway's law and how should we take into account cognitive load in teams. Can you share with us, so we are all on the same page, why we are doing this? What is the benefit? What are we trying to achieve in our organizations around this?
Sure. Hi, Ivan. Hi, everyone. It's good to be here. We can't be with you in person, but it's great that we can join you via this live feed. So I'm Matthew, and Manuel is in a more, is it a flowery shirt? It looks quite a summery shirt, yeah. So it's a very good question, Ivan. Thank you. The context really for team topologies is, the clue is on the front cover of the book. On the front cover of the book, it says team topologies, organizing business and technology teams for fast flow. And that's the key insight, is when we have this context where we need a fast flow of change, fast flow of changes to the software systems that enhance the services that we're providing, then we need a certain set of kind of design principles and operating principles that help to guide what we do. So in the past, we could go really slowly. We could afford to have big handoffs from one team to another because there were some big constraints in technology. Things like the infrastructure took a long time to provision. So there's almost no point in being able to deliver software multiple times a day if the infrastructure took weeks and weeks to provision and change. But of course, now we've got cloud. And with these kind of cloud and automation and other kind of techniques, we can make changes to our whole stack effectively within minutes. And so we can deploy many times a day. So we have the capability now to have a rapid flow of change to the software systems that enhance the services we're providing. And if we want that, if we want to achieve that, then we need to think in terms of flow. We need to think in terms of flow across the organization, multiple flows of change that are independent. And that affects the software architecture. It affects the teams. It affects the funding. It affects a huge number of things inside the organization. And The Team Topologies book, therefore, is a kind of starting point, some patterns and rules for thinking about and discussing the kind of interaction patterns and principles that we want in place to enable this fast flow of change.
Yeah, and if you like, if I may add, just to say, effectively, we're applying some of the engineering principles that we know for a long time. Things like loose coupling and high internal cohesion. We're applying that when we're thinking about teams as well, not just the systems that we produce. And that speaks to why I think the book has been adopted both from technical and more kind of business focused people. So those principles apply well to teams as well, enabled by some of the things that Matthew mentioned about fast flow, having the tooling, having the automation available to us these days. And the other thing the book does, I think, for me, is to bring to light some of the constraints of working with other people, basically. So things like you mentioned, Ivan, Conway's law, cognitive load, trust boundaries. I see those as constraints, things that we should be aware of if we want to really work effectively, especially across teams, across departments, etc.
Thank you. Without going into too many details, there are a lot of patterns in the book helping us achieve this. And some of them are structural, like how should we form our teams, what should be their purpose. There are also some patterns that are behavioral, like how should our teams interact, because not all work is the same in the organization. So could you briefly touch upon that, just to get a picture of how these patterns look like and what should we look for in our organizations?
Yes, absolutely. The first thing, really, if I think about team topologies now and the experience I've had and we've had since the book was published, the first thing I would say, I would stress, is that we should expect our organizations to evolve and adapt. And that's our starting point. We're expecting change. We're expecting the shape of teams, the shape of software systems to change. And that is really the starting point. It's about it being dynamic and adaptive. And in fact, the Japanese language translation of team topologies actually ended up with a subtitle that said something like an adaptive model for modern software delivery, something like this. They'd realized, the Japanese translators had wanted to emphasize the adaptive aspects. And I think that's really important. So, because although we do have some structural and behavioral patterns, the really, really key aspect is about the fact we're expecting to change it. We're not looking for a template. We're not looking for a fixed set of kind of team structure, if you like. We should sort of forget about structure and think about dynamics and the adaptability. That's a much more important aspect of it. But that said, there are some patterns that we can adopt, and that at the beginning look very much like structure and behavior, as you said, Ivan.
Yeah, I think one of the core ideas we talk about in terms of structure is to start with what we call stream-aligned teams, right? Which go by different names in the past. Cross-functional product teams could be another name. What we're trying to say is that we want. If we want that fast flow that we were talking about earlier, we need teams that are aligned to continuous flow of work that has value to some customers of the organization. And so that's the starting point in terms of types of teams. And then you need other types of teams because of the constraints, because of cognitive load. You are going to need very likely other types of teams, such as platform enabling teams, to help the streamlined teams be able to have that end-to-end ownership of a stream of value without being overloaded, without basically having to take all sorts of shortcuts or compromise on quality or compromise on security, etc. So you actually need an ecosystem or a team of teams, if you like. So those are kind of the fundamental patterns. But then, as Matthew said, it's really key to evolve those over time, because the challenges are going to change What is the challenge today might be totally different even in 6 months or 3 months. So the adaptability aspect is so important. And we use also, by the way, the interactions between teams to actually help us surface issues and surface where actually we have some gap here that we need to address, whether it's with some helpful tooling in a platform, or is some teams needs to upskill on some domain. But this continuous kind of evolution of the organization of the teams is going to help us identify what's going to be needed next.
And I'd like to add on that one. What we've realized and what other people have realized is that at the heart of team topologies is a kind of we're putting people at the heart of software delivery and modern organizations in general. It's much we deliberately wanted to explore a humane approach, so humanistic, something that cares about the people. This is not a mechanistic approach. It is not a machine. This is, as Manuel said, it's more like an ecosystem. We want to make sure that these teams are kind of sustainable or viable over a long period of time. We're not burning people out. We're trying to avoid burnout. That's partly why we're thinking about team cognitive load. And so it's a deliberate part of what we wanted to do is to make this approach much more much more kind of humane and humanistic, rather than a kind of mechanism. So like some of these large agile at scale approaches seem quite mechanistic. We wanted to avoid that.
Yeah, this is what I also wanted to stress, how this is, after all, a toolbox full of very useful patterns, but we should be very careful not to fall into cargo cult trap and implement all of them and think that we did good for our organizations. In the end, we need to know why we are doing it. We want to achieve faster flow, whatever that means, and then pick and implement appropriate ones. So the goal of the game is not to implement all of them. The goal of the game is to have them at disposal and use what makes sense at that time for that purpose, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, as long as sometimes it's difficult. You can't just take one idea in isolation. You need to understand how the ensemble of ideas works. But yes, up to a point, we're not trying to take a big catalog of things and implement every single one. We're trying to understand what's the intent of team topologies. It's fast flow through limiting team cognitive load by making sure that these teams are empowered to do effective work without them burning out. And so if we've got that in mind, then we're probably not going to go very far wrong. But if we're trying to do something else, if we're trying to optimize for, I don't know, velocity, if we're trying to optimize for cost, something like this, then team topologies is probably not going to help, because that's not what we're trying to do.
Yeah. And we cannot escape from the fact that things have changed a little bit over the course of last couple of years, and we see that remote work is spreading all over, and there is some influence that this remote work does to organizations, and some things should be a little bit different in this remote way of working. I don't think that all organizations, or many of them, are still accustomed to this remote way of working. And what you are now discussing a lot, and what this talk is all about, are those remote aspects of this interaction between teams. We prepared, better said, Manuel and Matthew prepared a small role play just to give us a feeling of how that looks like sometimes today in the organizations, just to get a feel of what kind of problems do we possibly have in our organizations without even knowing that we have them. So we will play a short video about a typical day of two developers, engineers in one organization that are trying to solve a problem. And let's see how that goes for them, right?
Okay, so what do I need to do today? Let me fire up my task list and see what I've got to do. So here we go. What's going on? So, oh, this is already done. We've migrated the foobar to the new cloud environment. That's fine. And Sam is doing the new deployment pipeline configuration. That's fine. What's this? New database in the cloud environment for waypoints. This is the one for me. I'll add myself there. Yeah, it sounds like about size 3. That's not a problem. What are the details? We need 10 times scalability. Can the infrastructure platform or database teams help? Yeah, that would be nice, wouldn't it? I don't really know about how to configure this new database in the cloud environment. Okay, well, sounds fine. We've hit our WIP limit of 2 out of 2 for the doing, but that's okay. This sounds like it's small enough. Where can I find out how to make this happen? Well, let's have a look in Slack now. Which of these channels do I need to go into? Is it the infrastructure team? Is it the database team? Is it a now platform team? I don't know. What have we got? Architecture, Cassandra, data design forum, data import, hold, databases, discuss. Is this it? DB permissions. What's this for? Diagnose database permissions used. No, it's not that. Kubernetes. I have no idea which channel it's in. What can we do? Can we go to data design, database, disk data? This is annoying. How do we find out where we can get some help from? Database, channels, databases, design. No. What am I supposed to do? Where do we find this stuff out? What else can we search for? Database, DB, database. Let's have a look, 2 channels. Well, what's this? DB provisioning, provision databases, Pluto requests. Why is it called Pluto requests? Why is the channel called Pluto requests when it's all about database provisioning? Join. Let's see what happens in here. Hi, I am working on walking tours. I need to provision a new cloud database. Can you help? I should spell it properly. Let's see what happens. Okay. I mean, it would be kind of cool if the name of the Slack channel was a bit more, descriptive. Maybe I can send them some details about this book that I've just been reading, this Remote Team Interactions workbook. Where's that channel gone again? By the way, it would be great to have a channel name that is a bit more linked to DB provisioning. Big smile. Check out this new book I have picked up recently. Posting project, it has some useful tips on channel naming. Let's see what else, because I've got the copy somewhere here. Where is the bit that I was going to do? Here we go. Team focus conventions for chat tools. This is the bit that I remember from before. Page 34. Let's go down to page 34. Find that. Page 34. Here we go. This is the bit I was. Team focus conventions for chat tools. Just get back to those folks in here and put a suggestion here. See page 34 in particular. It's got all this stuff here about like platform team data, platform team. So what we could do is, example, the channel could be called like this: platform team database provisioning. Let's see what they say.
Pause. What's happening here? The channel names in Slack chat were not intuitive, making it difficult for the person in the Streamline team to find the right channel for the database provisioning team. This is an example of where poor design of the online space adds to team cognitive load. Luckily, the engineer had read the Remote Team Interactions workbook and so suggested that the channel be renamed based on the naming conventions in the workbook.
All right, I finished updating that document. I think it's time for lunch. I just want to check Slack one more time. Oh, there's a new request or message in our Pluto request channel. Let me see if I can answer that quickly. Hi, I'm working on walking tours. I need to provision a new cloud database. Can you help? Yes, that's exactly what our DB provisioning service is for. So, sure. What I can do is send them the documentation. I mean, it's available on the wiki, but I can send direct link to the onboarding document, and that should make their life easier. Here we go. Get link. Copy link, done.
Here's the direct link to the DB provisioning onboarding guide. Okay, that should help. Let me know if you have any issues. Okay. Something else here. Okay, I'll have a look in a moment. I don't want to forget to update our team API, because this means, yes, as I thought, this team wasn't using our service yet. So that means we have a new customer using our service. That's the walking tours streamline team onboarded. So starting today, it's the 9th of May, 2022. Last Net Promoter Score rating, not yet, because they have not filled in any surveys yet for our customers. Okay, cool. I'll ping our team later this afternoon so they know we have a new customer to take care of. And what else was there? Something about channels. It would be great to have a channel name that's a bit more linked to DB provisioning. Check out this new book I've picked up recently, Team Topologies Workbook. It has some useful tips on channel naming. Remote Team Interactions Workbook by Skelton, Manuel, Pais. So see page 34 in particular. Example, channel could be called like this. Okay, why would it be called like this? Okay, let me have a look at the book. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, I think I bought the PDF version of that book not long ago. Yes, in fact, I had it here with all my other books that I have stored. Okay, so let's open that. Remote Team Interactions Workbook using Team Topologies, which is patterns for remote working. Okay, so I don't have time now. What did they say? See page 34 in particular. And here's an example, okay? So let's go to page 34, Team Focus Conventions for Chat Tools. Okay. Many organizations allow a free reign within the chat tool. Okay, why is that a problem? Define a set of conventions that improve predictability and discoverability. For example, include a team name and type of team in the channel. Okay, yeah, I guess that makes sense. We had Pluto, which is the name of the team, but yeah, it's not really very meaningful for people who don't know what the Pluto team does. And so what they're proposing is platform team database provisioning. Okay. That would be good. So let me rename the channel. Okay. Save changes. Everything else is the same. So in going back to the team API, I know we have the channels listed here. This is our team, Pluto channel. Pluto requests was for other people to send this request. So now we've changed it to platform team database provisioning. Yeah, I can see that's much clearer for other teams to figure out where they have to ask for things. That was a nice idea.
Pause. What's happening here? The engineer in the platform team assumed that the Streamline team just needed to be onboarded. They updated the team API of the platform team to reflect the new customer, but did not expect any collaboration. The Slack channel for the platform team was renamed to follow the conventions in the Remote Team Interactions Workbook.
Well, I'll tell you what else I should do in here. So we now know that we're going to be collaborating with the platform team on database provisioning. So let's update our team API to show exactly this. Platform team DB provisioning collaboration. What's the purpose? Well, the purpose is really kind of explore how the DB can handle 10 times scaling. And I don't know, it's going to take something like maybe 3 days from the 10th of May. Okay, so that's now updated in our team API. That's cool. So what else have we got? What else did they talk about back in this channel? Let's have a look through replies. Okay, so you've done that. That is great. There's some more replies in here. Here's a direct link to the DB provisioning. So here's a direct link to DB provisioning onboarding guide. Let's have a look. Okay. Yeah, but I don't need an onboarding guide. What I need to work together with the people in the platform team to deal with the fact we need 10 times kind of low, 10 times scalability on the database. We know the database doesn't work. Why they just sent a link to the onboarding guide is not what I need.
Pause again. What's happening here? The engineer in the Streamline team was inspired by the channel renaming by the platform team and renamed their own channel based on the workbook conventions. They also updated the team API for the Streamline team to show the expected collaboration phase with the platform team.
All right, back from lunch. Let's see what's next. Just checking Slack. Oh, hi, good work on the channel rename. We've copied the idea and put it in our channel name, Stream Walking Tours. Oh, cool. Nicely done. And how can we work towards getting 10x scalability in the DB? I'm not sure why they're asking this. I had already sent the document earlier. Well, I can send it again. Get link. Copy link. Hi, I'm not sure. I think I had shared the onboarding link earlier. It had examples on how to set up for different scenarios. Here we go. Maybe they also haven't seen that the document lists the different endpoints you might need. And don't forget to use or create a new API key for requests. Example would be, for example, get DB instance and then pass the API key, whatever there is, A, B, C, D, E, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Of course, replace with the actual API key. All right, I hope that helps. And now I'm going to go back and check my Trello board tasks.
Pause. What's happening here? The engineer in the platform team still assumed that they just needed to onboard the Streamline team, but the onboarding details did not address the 10x scalability issue. They were expecting to use X as a service interaction with the other team.
All right, let's see if we can get this collaboration going. What's going on? So back to platform team. How can we, sorry, my message. How can we work towards getting 10 times scalability? Let's see what they say. I think I shared the onboarding link earlier. It has examples of setup for different scenarios. Yeah, but what? The document lists different endpoints. Don't forget to create or use a new API key, blah, 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 API key. Yeah, but this is not what we need. It's not about onboarding. We need to work out how we actually can make this database actually scale completely differently. Okay. Let's see. Could we jump on a Google Meet call? I think we need to discuss in more detail. Hi.
Hey, how's it going?
That's all right. Yeah, it's been a long time, hasn't it, since that migration project in the office?
About 2 years, maybe more.
About 2 years, but years. Good to see you again.
Yeah, nice to see you.
So thanks for your time. I just want to share some details about this this database stuff. I'll just share my screen. Here we go. This screen here. It's about the waypoint stuff. So waypoints are, you know, this stuff from before, but we've now got these guided, so got these walking tours, so self-guided tours with mobile app, and the waypoints are specific, you know, GIS data, geographic data, different parts around the city. Anyway, the key thing is that we're expecting to need 10 times scalability, or 10 times the volume of requests compared to before. This is the key thing. And so we need to just try to work out whether that's even going to work based on what you've got.
Yeah, that's quite a strong requirement there on scalability.
Yeah, it's quite a lot bigger than we've seen before, because there's literally like 10 times the number of pings from the mobile device, whatever. So anyway, this is our team API board here. Mm-hmm. So as you know, we're expecting this collaboration to take maybe 3 days.
We're not expecting any collaboration actually with your team anytime soon, to be frank. So we thought you were just going to use the service and follow the documentation examples. So if you want to open our team API for our platform team, you'll see that we didn't
this
have
one
that
here, team API, DB provisioning.
Yep, that's it.
Okay. Okay, so your team API.
So you can see, we have some collaboration going on.
So you're collaborating with guided tours, but not walking tours.
Yeah, they need a small change to the API, and so.
And you're not expecting to interact with us at all.
Not at the moment.
Yeah. Okay.
So, but yeah, I understand what you're saying about scalability. That's kind of a interesting challenge because we haven't had that request before. I hadn't realized it was a fairly different use case. So what we can do is, what I propose, maybe we can book in a couple of days to collaborate, since it's fairly major change, and then we can go from there and see what else
Okay.
we need to do, if we can move on by ourselves or if we need to collaborate longer.
Yep.
When were you expecting to collaborate again?
Well, we made an assumption, which is a classic mistake. But anyway, we made an assumption that we'd be able to do it basically from today.
Oh, right. So this week is going to be a bit difficult. We have some training coming up. And what about, would you be available next week, Thursday, Friday, maybe?
Yeah, we can make that work. We can make that work.
Okay. So just so we're in sync, let me update our team API. So we're expecting to collaborate with you. So collaboration.
Purposes are looking at the 10 times scalability of the database. Yeah.
So it's not fully defined what we need to do, but we know it's initial kind of collaboration to figure out what is going to need to be involved. And so we said
a couple of days to start with.
I think that's the.
I mean, it might be 2 days, might be enough, but at least we'll get some idea of what. Yeah, we'll get some idea of what's needed over those 2 days.
Yeah.
Did you manage to implement this 10x scalability in the end?
Yes.
But it took some time. I must say that when I was watching this clip, I took a look at our own messaging platform and looking at our communication channels, and I found several channels. One is called Platform, the other one is called SCM, third one is Dev, fourth one is DevOps Leads, fifth one is DevOps, and sixth one is OpenShift. So it seems like these things can get out of control.
I think it speaks to something more fundamental, right? Which is many organizations have not taken the time to really put the effort into sort of defining purpose, defining the mission of different areas of the organization, and taking the time. They've not taken the time to sort of give space for people to find agreement about what that mission and purpose is. And so therefore the names of Slack channels and so on are sort of not consistent, or they are not very well defined, because there is, and that just reflects the lack of clarity in the organization as a whole. And that's one of the key aspects really of making remote work well, is increasing the clarity of mission or purpose of different parts of the organization more fundamentally. If the organizations that do well at remote have taken the time to clarify those things and to build that clarity and nurture that clarity in the people, it's not enough just to write things on a wiki. You've got to actually take the time so that people really understand it and really find the value in that kind of clarity of purpose and mission of different parts of the organization. And then you'll see that reflected in things like channel names.
And of course, it's the hard part of remote is not the tooling. That's kind of the easy part to, you have some chat tools in place and whatever you might need. And so the difficult things are then about interactions, about how are we going to work together when we're not in the same office, we're not in the office at all, and so that's what I think today we're seeing a differentiation between organizations that are doing well remotely and are not kind of looking back, and organizations who are trying to go back to the office, or they're struggling a bit with remote, is probably because they haven't paid the attention that is needed in terms of things like how do we reduce noise in communications when we're remote, how do we make sure we're respecting trust boundaries between different groups of people, right? So because we're not going to trust everyone with the same depth. It depends. Are these people in our team? Then the level of trust is going to be different to other groups. How do we make things easy to discover? That it's easy to find information we need. It's easy to find the which teams we should interact with. So things that are difficult in general and remotely even more, things that we have to pay attention if we really want to be effective and have that ecosystem of teams that we were talking about earlier that are working well together. Remote just makes that a bit more difficult. In my opinion, many organizations who are trying to go back to the office is partially because they have not put the effort to address this sort of problems.
What are some additional issues that you saw besides the lack of clarity in the vision? Is this the root cause of everything, or do you see some other issues that maybe we don't see on first in the organizations?
That's a really good question. Thanks, Ivan. So, I mean, one of the things that we put in the team topologies book originally, obviously, we wrote and published team topologies before the pandemic. So this is, so technically this is pre-pandemic, but many of the ideas translate, and that's why we wrote and published the remote team interactions workbook just a few weeks ago to clarify some of this. But if you think about it, one of the I think it's fair to say one of the new ideas that we put into team topologies is this idea that you can, if we have a defined set of team types, stream-aligned team, enabling team, complicated subsystem team, platform team, and a defined set of team interaction modes, collaboration, X as a service, facilitating. If these things are defined, we can then start to use signals from interacting teams to tell us whether something is going well or not. So because we've got clarity about different team types and because we've got clarity about different team interactions, we can then go, well, what happens if this team is expecting to interact with this team using one particular interaction, but this team is expecting a different interaction? There'll be some conflict, but suddenly that conflict is telling us something useful. And so suddenly now, instead of conflict and mismatched expectations being just noise, now we can use that as a valuable signal that helps us to have a conversation very quickly, just like we saw in the simulation a few minutes ago. Because those two engineers realized that there was a mismatch, they looked at the team API and they saw that there was a mismatch between the expectations. They could have a straightforward conversation because we're using kind of language and mental models that allow us to get out of that problem and towards something that's much more valuable. And so I think that's a key aspect of this, whether we're doing it remotely or not, is kind of an improved and more useful mental model around what happens when we get some kind of mismatch or conflict inside the organization. It now is an indicator that maybe the boundaries are wrong, that maybe we misunderstood something. We've got a route to a much more healthy kind of resolution of that situation. It becomes something really valuable, effectively, like a diagnostic tool, if you like.
And then it kind of can manifest in different ways depending if you're in the office or remotely. But it's like Matthew said, is still the same kind of things we're trying to solve, except maybe in the office, in that role play example, maybe those two engineers would have a coffee and discuss and realize over the coffee that we actually we thought you were just going to use the service and we thought we were going to collaborate, and so now we sort it out and now we're going to, because we know how collaboration should happen, maybe we're going to work together next week. We're going to book a meeting room, and we're going to work together, or what have you. And then remotely, the difference is then, of course, we'll probably use, maybe we'll create a chat channel a channel dedicated to the collaboration, so we know this is where the asynchronous communication is going to happen as we're working through this issue of the 10x scalability, right? So different ways in which we solved, but it's effectively the same problem. And for better or worse, remote kind of helps surface maybe some of these conflicts or mismatched expectations more quickly, because sometimes things are sort of masked by your face-to-face interactions, and sometimes even almost by chance, as we had a chat over the coffee machine, and turned out we realized there was this problem. And so in remote, you need to be more intentional. You need to be actually thinking about these things, and being more intentional about interactions and which channels are we going to use, or which tooling, etc. Make those things clear from the beginning.
Yeah, that was just what I wanted to mention, that in real life, maybe that casual coffee in the morning will probably compensate for a lot of these things that we saw here. But you use extensively Team API. Is this something that we are missing today in organizations that are in remote way of working?
I think it's something that's missing, or something like a Team API is missing from many teams, whether you're remote or not. And what the Team API is doing, so just like a software API, so application programming interface, what that does in software, of course, is to define the shape of the thing that you're trying to call into. And so with the Team API, we're taking a technical construct like an API and we're applying it to a team. And of course, we can do that because we know about Conway's law. So the shape of the communication between different parts of the organization is likely to be reflected in some architecture, and sort of vice versa. And a team is going to have a long-lived responsibility for one or more services. They're not just going to work on this software this week and then some different software next week. That is not realistic in 2022 with the amount of cognitive load, with the amount of different technologies involved, and with the different kind of domain complexity involved. It's just not realistic to have people moving from one code base to another. So they're going to have a long-lived relationship with a piece of code, or part of the system. And so what is the way in which we kind of talk to that team? What is the shape and nature of our requests into that team? How does that team want to work with other people from the organization? That's what we really mean by Team API. It's quite a technical term, and people outside of IT and software, it doesn't really mean so much to those people. We know, for example, that team topologies is being used in healthcare settings in the UK, where I live. And these are teams with no software or IT people at all. These are healthcare professionals delivering healthcare on the front line. So the idea of Team API in that sense, we need a different term effectively. But the principle is valid, which is, what is the way in which we as a team want other parts of the organization to interact with us? What's an effective way for you to interact with us? Here is how we'd like you to do it. And that kind of clarity and definition is hugely valuable, because it means that instead of having bespoke conversations every single time we want to interact with this group, it's nicely defined. We've thought about it. We can scale it. We can adopt effective patterns in similar other parts of the organization and scale the approach of communication. So that's what Team API is really doing. It's helping to facilitate conversations to start with. It's also helping to improve that kind of clarity and definition around mission and things, but also kind of ways of working, ways of interacting with us. What do we want? And all of that kind of stuff helps us to have much more kind of useful conversations on an ongoing basis, rather than always being down at the very lowest level and negotiating every single aspect. We're trying to define things that then enable more effective organizations, faster flow, and so on.
Effectively, what is powerful about this is that we're combining these ideas of loose coupling between teams, and having teams that have clear mission or clear customers, etc. And so we're trying to have teams that can be more independent, on one hand, right? So those are the kind of streamlined teams we're talking about. But then when you bring that together with something like Team API or whatever you want to call the way we expose how the team works and how we prefer to communicate with others, we make that kind of interface, that sort of public interface, if you like, we make that very clear for other teams, because we know it's not realistic that there's zero dependencies between teams. There's always going to be dependencies, but we're trying to facilitate the interactions by making it very clear to other teams. So we're looking outwards. How should you interact with us as a team, right? So this combination of loose coupling, having teams being more independent, but at the same time making it very clear what is the interface with others. So when there are interactions, when there is a need to collaborate or a need to sort out some issues, that we don't have, we minimize problems, minimize conflict or what have you, by making those things very clear.
Thank you. Do we have maybe any questions from the audience about these concepts? I wanted you to ask you, now that we are slowly wrapping this up, what are some examples of solutions and practices that you've seen work well in these remote environments?
Well, we've seen quite a few people, quite a few organizations adopt the idea of the Team API. The way that they implement it is very different. So we have got an example on our GitHub code repository, but many people have taken it further or taken it in different directions. And this idea of being very clear about how to interact with the team seems to really, really help, because people are now thinking about interactions. They're thinking about a team boundary. They're not just thinking about individuals. They're thinking, oh, there's a team boundary around that group of people there. How do they want me to interact? What are the current expectations? It immediately helps people. It gives people a language to think about some of the dynamics that are really important when we're building software, which is kind of boundaries, dependencies, all of these kind of things. And that definitely seems to help. However you actually implement it, whether you put it in a mirror board or a wiki or even in code, we've seen some people do like a Team API, but do it as a JSON or anyway some actual API. Anyway, however you do it, whichever option you choose, the important thing is that it facilitates that awareness about expectations and interactions between teams. And so that one aspect, the Team API aspect, does seem to really, really help.
What's also interesting is the workbook that we've now published presents some ideas, things like what you saw in the role play, having some simple naming conventions that increase discoverability, use intensively a Team API or something similar to actually evolve your communication patterns, thinking about trust boundaries and how we organize our virtual workspace based on that. But what's interesting is those are kind of starting points, and what you see organizations that are really focused on how do we make remote work and how do we keep kind of the team first perspective when we're working remotely and we're supporting teams, then these organizations by themselves find better ways to organize, to help teams communicate, etc. So there are some examples even in the workbook from a company called AutoTrader in the UK, for example, where they automate creation of some Slack channels based on the code repositories whenever there's a new service, or they update the list of people in the channel based on the list of maintainers. So you can get quite creative, and you can look at what are some ways that we can help, whether automated or not, but what are the things we should be looking at to make it easier for teams to interact and to do their work more efficiently and with more clarity overall. So I think the workbook is effectively a starting point for the organizations that want to continuously improve the remote or hybrid ways of working.
Thank you. I think there are generally different types of work that happen in the organization, and people go through different phases. And I know that there are some phases in which you can work pretty much autonomously. But what is your experience with onboarding of new hires in the organization? So, do you think that remote work will be able to cover for all those interactions that happened in real life during onboarding, or will there always be some kind of a gap?
Go for Manuel.
I think you need you're always going to need to sort of promote informal networks between people. So specifically, if someone's onboarding organization working remotely, you would expect the team where they will be part of to help them go through how do we work, how do we interact with other teams, all these things. But kind of in general, you need to, because you don't have that face-to-face communication, or maybe you're going every quarter or every year, you have people coming together and spend some time together, which is great. But in general, that's also something we need to be aware of. We mentioned not very in detail in the workbook, but building social networks through events, like you might have internal tech conference, or you might have kind of regular lunch talks, or some more kind of hobby focused kind of events, things where people can get to know each other, especially if which is now the becoming normal, that people have never met face to face and they're working together for months or years. So promoting this sort of informal networks to build is quite valuable for organizations. It's something that you don't, of course, maybe see the immediate value, but down the line, people are going to know each other, and maybe in 1 year from now, oh, I have a problem with scalability, and I remember Matthew had this problem a year ago because he talked about it in a lunch talk, and now I'm going to ask him, right? This kind of things that are sort of to some extent accidental, but you need to actually promote, and you need those informal networks. It's not, of course, when we talk about team interactions and team API, that's more for the teams that are more closely related, but promoting those informal networks is important down the line, where you don't even know what's kind of problems teams are going to face, and this is going to be valuable. So definitely something to consider, and actually invest in having those sort of events, or whatever ways that you want to promote informal networks without a specific, let's say, business goal right now, but we're making sure the organization is connected.
There's one extra thing I'd add to that. So there's the value of building those informal networks, and a key aspect of that is the trust that we're building. We're explicitly giving time and space for people to build trust across and through these natural the kind of team boundaries. We want those team boundaries to be strong, but we also want the trust to permeate, to cross over these boundaries. And so that's why you would bring people to the office. If you're going to insist people come back to the office, use the office as a way to build trust. Don't necessarily expect people to do any useful work in the office. Use the space in the office for them to meet other people, have some food, build trust, these kind of things, so that when they need to be remote, or when they need to be in a different office, because that's still remote, they have already built the trust. So thinking about how we use the physical office space and events like QED 2022, where you are now, thinking about how you use that physical space is really, really valuable. Use that to build that kind of trust that you could then use when people are remote. There's an additional aspect though, which is companies like Gitlab. So we've recently published a case study on the Team Topologies website from Gitlab, so the big DevOps kind of platform, and they talk about I'm just reading it now from the webpage. They talk about a handbook first mentality. So from their perspective, they're fully remote. They have been from the beginning, I believe. From their perspective, a new employee should be able to get started and up and running and be effective by reading a company handbook, which is obviously online and so on, editable. But it should be possible to guess what? It should be possible to self-service all of the stuff that you need to be able to become effective. Now, what does that sound like? Well, from team topologies, that sounds like a platform, because the whole purpose of the platform is to enable teams that use it to self-serve and become effective. And in this case, at delivering software. But we can use the team topologies ideas of reducing cognitive load, increasing discoverability through self-service platform. Use that kind of concept at multiple different other parts of the organization. It's not just about delivering software. How would we onboard a new person and enable them to be effective very quickly? We're going to have, there might be some enabling work. There might be a platform. The platform might be documentation, might be self-service, kind of step-by-step walkthrough in Slack and other tools that you're using to understand how to work properly, whatever it might be. We can use the same principles. So some combination of in-person events and use of office space to build that trust, or time available for virtual coffee, and kind of self-service documentation and discoverable information, so that person feels empowered and feels confident that they've found the right way to do it.
Yeah, that hybrid model is probably the future. And I'm sure that we here at QED have used this as a trust-building platform during these 2 days. Matthew, Manuel, thank you so much for being with us this morning.
Thank you very much.
That's great.
Hope to see you soon. Bye-bye.
Have a good day.
Bye-bye.
Cheers, everyone. Bye-bye.